The Yuengling Black and Tan was warm. It was ice cold when I sat down. She would be home soon. She was always at home when the kids got off of the school bus. I had the drapes drawn because the sunlight coming through the living room window was depressing. Right now, today, the darkness felt worn and comforting. I was not looking forward to the confrontation. I was ill-equipped, both mentally and emotionally, to handle it. My biggest fear was my anger. As a child, I was prone to temper tantrums. As an adult, I was unsure. In any event, it had to be quick because the school bus would arrive in about an hour. They cannot know. I will do everything in my power to keep them from knowing. 10 years of marriage down the drain. 10 years of my life wasted. 10 years of planning and dreaming for nothing. There was no future to look forward to. Nothing. A sensible man would have been musing about what he was going to say or how he was going to approach the coming discussion. Every time I tried to think of a clever line or comment, I came up blank. It always reverted back to the same point: self-pity. I was feeling sorry for myself and sorry for what my kids might have to go through. It was unacceptable. No plan of attack presented itself. Stupidly, I sat and waited for the situation to unfold. I was not ready. I drank the last of the warm beer as she opened the door. "John, what the hell are you doing sitting in the dark?" She walked over to the window to open the drapes. "No, let them shut a while." It was not a normal situation. I was never home in the middle of the day. I was always at work. Maybe that was part of the problem. She looked pensive as she put down her purse and jacket. "Are you ill?" "No, just depressed and disappointed." "Do you want to talk about it? Is there anything that I can do?" "There is nothing you can do, but I do want to talk about it. I just don't know how or where to start." "Is everything okay at work?" "Stop! Please stop! Just sit and listen. I will say what I have to say as best as I can. You don't have to say anything. In fact, I would prefer if you didn't say anything." Courtney sat and looked at her hands. I heard her quietly mumble to herself, "Oh, crap. I know about you and Mitch Cooper." She slowly looked up at me, and even in the dimly lit room, I could see the moisture in her eyes. Not tears, but almost. She started to say something, but I held up my hand. I didn't know what to do. I had no battle plan. In frustration, I threw the empty long neck across the room and stalked out the front door. She stood up but did nothing to try and stop me. I had no idea where I was going or what I was going to do. Matters of this nature were alien to me. First and foremost were the children. Courtney and I both came from broken homes. I swore that no matter what, my kids would never have to go through that. That meant that divorce was out of the question. It also meant that abandonment was not an option. I was screwed. My first stop was Gilbert Enterprises. There was plenty of vacation time on the books, and I had no trouble getting a week off. I had a small staff working for me, but they were all competent and able to fill in my absence. I started working at Gilbert 12 years ago as an apprentice draftsman, and now I was in charge of the entire graphics office, including a small cadre of maintenance personnel. I worked hard, and I was rewarded for my efforts. It looked like the summer trip to Dollywood was off the schedule. Shortly after I started at Gilbert, I met Courtney. I was always a bit confused as to how we met. It was some sort of barbecue at one of the engineers' houses. I was there, and then all of a sudden she was there with me. It wasn't as if I pursued her or anything. She started chatting, which was unusual because girls usually avoided me. I was not what you would call boyfriend material. I was too skinny, too tall, and too dorky. Courtney had been a year ahead of me in high school and had hung with the cool kids. In fact, I remembered that she spent a lot of time with one of the Fonzie wannabe guys. Yep, you guessed it. His name was Mitch. One thing led to another, and in less than a year, we were married and pregnant. At the time, it all seemed normal and above board. I was happy, and she seemed happy. Courtney was pretty much normal in all aspects. She didn't stand out in a crowd or draw attention to herself in any fashion. As far as I was concerned, she was perfect. 1 year after our son Bobby was born, we had our daughter Danny. Everything was absolutely great. For 10 years. Normally, people spend large amounts at restaurants when they are celebrating something. I ended up spending an exorbitant amount at my favorite sushi bar to drown my sorrows. Nothing was off the menu, and I treated myself to all of the delights that I always passed up because of the price. 2 hours later, I found myself at a Best Western hotel throwing up my expensive indulgence. It was better going in than coming out. I just was not good at this pity party stuff. I needed a plan. I needed help. I had a whole week to figure something out. There was no point in messing around with insurance, checking, or credit cards. There was nothing to change there. Our lifestyle would have to remain the same. I knew that some explanation would be required from Courtney, but I really didn't want it. If she admitted everything and I was forced to accept what she told me, then I would officially be a cuckold. I could not figure out how to avoid that. There was no way that she could or would deny it. That was not in her nature. I had no idea of the depth of the affair. I didn't know how long it had been going on or how serious it was. Was she planning on leaving me? Too damn many unanswered questions. I finally located a few old school friends who were aware of Mitch and Courtney's relationship. What was interesting was that there never seemed to be a breakup or falling out. As far as anyone knew, they were always a couple. Some of them were aware that I had married Courtney, but that was all. Mitch Cooper was a good-looking guy and very charismatic, just my opposite. He also was not very ambitious, academically or career-wise. He barely finished high school and had been working at a local Firestone Tire Company store for the last 10 years. He wasn't a manager or anything, just a tire installer. Now, there is nothing wrong with being a tire man, but at some point, most individuals advance to become shop or store managers. Mitch was still working at the entry level and seemed to be content with it. I was confused. What was the attraction? I worked my butt off to provide for my family and was rewarded with infidelity. I guess other women would have appreciated my efforts, but no other women ever expressed an interest in me. I was with Courtney because she wanted me to be with her. But then, why? I spent all day talking with old friends, acquaintances, and classmates. Putting everything together gave me a pretty clear picture. Courtney and Mitch never had a falling out. As far as anyone knew, they were always a couple, and many of them assumed that they still were. I had never questioned her about her relationship with him. I didn't want to know. I assumed that it was old history and that she had moved on. I was not jealous, suspicious, or worried about my marriage. I guess that was my mistake. Now I knew that I had to confront her. It would be difficult for me, and I'm sure for her. I was just hoping that she didn't hurt me too much. Of course, I still had no idea what I was hoping to gain or how I was going to eliminate the problem. I was able to get a small private table at Luciano's the next evening. We could talk without being overheard or interrupted. Courtney arrived right on time, looking good but apprehensive. She sat and smiled, but said nothing. We ordered, ate, and enjoyed the wine. It was awkward to say the least. Neither of us mentioned the problem at hand. Finally, the coffee came, and I decided to open Pandora's box. Can I get some sort of an explanation without any emotional rhetoric? Rather than try and explain, could you give me some idea of just what you want to know? It might be easier and quicker that way. Was this a way to avoid disclosing something that I was unaware of, or was it an honest reaction to my request? How long? It was a short question, and hopefully I would get a short answer. 12 years. Needless to say, I was shocked, and I am sure that my expression showed it. She saw my reaction and looked away, avoiding my eyes. You have been seeing him the entire time we have been married? Yes. There was no embellishment to go with her answer. It was short and to the point. She sat silent, waiting for my next question. I was struggling to stay seated. Part of me was wanting to get up and leave, but I really needed a better answer. I motioned to the waiter for refills on the coffee. Things were not going as I anticipated. Why did you marry me? I was trying to keep the questions clean and easy, but I felt that the answer to this one would be more complicated. The quick answer, because you could give me what he could not or would not. That answer generated a whole bunch of new questions. I was hesitant to respond too quickly because I didn't want to interrupt the conversation flow. I amazed myself that I had the ability to hold my temper, and then I realized that I was actually becoming intrigued by the way the conversation was going. But why did you specifically pick me? I didn't. He did. Courtney, I think we have reached the point where you are going to have to stop giving me abbreviated answers. I want and need an explanation. I promise that I will sit here and remain quiet while you explain the whole thing so that it makes sense. Okay, but before I start, please believe me that at no time was there any attempt to be malicious or to hurt you in any manner. We, never did or said anything to disrespect you in any way. Other than the fact that she deliberately turned me into a cuckold, I had to agree with her. I nodded for her to continue. Mitch and I were very close for many years and swore devotion to each other. We were truly in love, just like in the movies and in those trashy romance novels. As hokey as it sounds, we were real soulmates. We had one big problem that we could not get over. I wanted a home and a family, and Mitch absolutely refused to even consider it. After months and months, we finally decided that we would try to find a surrogate husband. We had no idea what we were doing, but it sounded like a good idea at the time. Trying to find a suitable guy was not that easy. It had to be somebody who we felt could provide a stable environment and still be a good companion. You were our final choice. Believe it or not, John, you were the best of the best. That is why we choose you. I waved to the waiter for coffee refills. It was all too ridiculous to believe. Courtney, I don't want to interrupt you, but are you saying that the plan was to live with me as man and wife, but to keep Mitch as your lover and soulmate? Yes. Are the kids mine? Yes, you can check, if you feel it is necessary. Returning home. The night ended quickly. I found myself at a loss for words. The conversation died, and we both just sat there looking at each other. Of course, I had many more questions, but my emotions were all over the place, and I was afraid of losing control. I needed to process the information that I had, and I needed to do it quietly with no disruptions. The next few days were depressing. I found it difficult to understand how she could have so easily accepted me as a sexual partner when she was so madly in love with Mitch. They both knew that their plan would include Courtney and I having sex. Did he have to convince her to sleep with me, or did she have to convince him to accept it? Looking back, I was not able to discern any times when there was an intense romantic relationship between them. It all seemed to be platonic and very casual. Most of the information that I had came after I accidentally discovered a text message on her phone. That generated a deeper investigation which confirmed my suspicions. I could only go back a short period of time, but I did notice that they only got together once or twice a month, if that. It was not what I would call a hot and heavy affair. I had no idea how intense it had been earlier in the marriage. The text messages were not erotic or sexual, but very businesslike, if that is the proper term. It was like setting up a dental appointment. I was sure that she had brought him up to date on the present situation, and I was pretty sure that they had gotten together to discuss how they were going to handle it. Courtney had told the children that I was away on a business trip. In order to maintain family stability, I had to return home and act as normal as possible. By the end of the week, I had moved back into the house and back into my bedroom. Other than the absence of sex, our life was back to normal. I joined a gym. I wasn't overweight or flabby, but I wasn't what you would call a hunk. I felt like I was now in competition for my own wife, even though I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay with her. Although I didn't have a specific plan, I was motivated to be in better shape and to be healthier. I started to get up earlier. I had a protein shake for breakfast and then went directly to the gym before anyone else was out of bed. I would shower at the gym and go directly to work. One day of cardio and the next day of HIIT and weight training. I found myself becoming obsessive about exercising. I started working longer hours and more on weekends. I volunteered for trips and seminars, anything to get away for a while. I was amazed that I was able to maintain a normal relationship with Courtney under the circumstances. We never discussed the problem. The only time anything was different was in the bedroom. We were in limbo. No direction, no plan, no future. I felt like I was living with a housekeeper who I happened to share a bed with. I needed help. Spending an hour on a treadmill or C2 rower 4 days a week gives you a lot of time to think. I enjoyed being married. I never envisioned myself married to anyone other than Courtney. I still couldn't. Although I could never forgive her betrayal, I found it to be a bit confusing. The more I thought about it, the more confused I got. She was married to me, but she was sleeping with somebody else. Ergo, I was a cuckold. Or was I? The man she was cheating on me with was her partner years before I ever met her. Was she cheating on me with him, or was she cheating on him with me? It was so easy to confuse myself. Does the piece of paper called a marriage license make the difference, or is it the perception of the relationship? Courtney and Mitch each felt differently about family and marriage. Somehow, unknowingly, I was pulled into the mess and used to resolve the conflict. The price that Mitch had to pay to keep Courtney happy was to let me have her sexually. Knowing how close they were, that must have been a difficult decision for him to make. Still, I was being used and I didn't like it. It seemed to me that I was getting the better part of the deal, however. I endured my self-imposed mental dilemma for about 2 weeks, and then decided that since I was not going to divorce Courtney, and I was not going to leave, that I was going to continue having sex with her. I would try my best not to be bitter and not to be vengeful. Before starting this new phase of my marriage, I also decided that some ground rules should be set in place. That afternoon, I made a reservation at Luciano's for supper. The evening started slow, just like the previous time. Courtney seemed hesitant to begin any sort of conversation. I wanted to get everything out, but I could not bring myself to start. The waiter broke the silence for us. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" It wasn't anything dramatic, but it did serve to get us talking. "Just another coffee refill, please." "I guess we should finish up. It looks like they are getting anxious to close." "Courtney, I would like things to get back to normal if we could. Under the circumstances, there are a few things that I think we should agree on. It is nothing complicated, and if you don't like what I am about to propose, I am willing to listen to some sort of counteroffer." She nodded for me to go on and gave me a small smile. "First, if it is all right with you, I would like to start having sex again. Sleeping together is fine, but I really miss the sex. I will probably have some difficulties at first, but hopefully I will eventually get over it and things will normalize. Do you have any problem with that?" Courtney nodded her head and non-verbally mouthed the word, "okay." "Second, I would like us to continue living together as man and wife until the children are both grown. When there are no longer any children at home, we will quietly get a divorce and go our separate ways. We are looking at about 10 years until Danny goes to college or gets married. Will you be able to hold out for that long?" There was a slight pause, as if she was in deep thought. "John, you mean that if everything goes along satisfactory, that we will continue living together until there are no longer any children living at home, and then we can split up?" "No. Then we will split up. It will not be an option." "But what if—" She never finished the sentence. I looked at her, waiting for a more definite answer. Finally, she looked up and mouthed the word "okay" again. But this time she did not smile. "Finally, I feel that it is okay for you to continue your relationship with Mitch, but I insist that you do it in such a manner that I do not know about it. I am not happy with the situation, but I feel that it would be difficult and stressful for both of us if I insisted that you stop seeing him. I cannot and will not waste any time or effort trying to break up your—" I never finished that sentence. I did not wait for a reply from my wife. I stood, threw 320s on the table, and held her chair for her so we could leave. The ride home was quiet. There was no sex that night. The terms that I set out were never openly discussed. It was as if they were automatically accepted as soon as I presented them. We did start having sex again. It was not really great at first, but slowly we became accustomed to each other, and things improved. Home life was back to normal. As the sex got better, it also got a little rougher. I didn't do it on purpose, but I believed that I was feeling a bit competitive, so I tried harder. I became a bit more demanding about types of sex and frequency. Courtney never refused or complained. After a while, the novelty wore off and I found myself reverting back. I guess I was trying to prove a point. The most unusual thing that I realized was that as time passed, I no longer felt that I was being cuckolded. Technically, I guess I was. But in my head, I started to see it differently. Courtney was Mitch's woman. She had always been his woman. I was using her in any fashion that I wanted, any time that I wanted, and there was not a thing that he could do about it. Of course, I was feeding her and providing shelter and clothing, but I convinced myself that that was repayment for her services and taking care of the kids. I was unaware of the times that she was spending with him as agreed upon. What I didn't know didn't hurt me. One day, when my car needed an oil change, I decided to take in to the Firestone store that Mitch worked at. As the car was being serviced, I stood in front of the glass service window that looked over the service department and stared at my wife's lover. At first, he didn't notice, but after a while, it became obvious. He stopped momentarily and realized who I was. I am sure he had seen me before, but never under these circumstances. He worked the tire brake machine for almost an hour with me watching. I never wavered, and he noticed. When my car was finally ready, I moved away from the display window and left. He looked uncomfortable the entire time. I felt redeemed a bit, but not much. A week later, I took Courtney's Civic in for an oil change and did the same thing. After about 30 minutes, he just stopped working and stood staring at me. With a big smirk on my face, I gave him a 2 thumbs up sign and laughed. He couldn't hear me, but he did see it. I walked away from the window and left shortly thereafter. The next day, the shit hit the fan. When I got home from work, I noticed that the kids were not there. There was no supper waiting, but Courtney was. "You rotten son of a bitch!" It was a good start, and there was more to come. I sat down while she paced around the kitchen table, glaring at me. "For 10 years, Mitch and I never once humiliated or disrespected you in any way. For 10 years, we gave you all of the consideration that we could so that things would run smoothly. Now you decide that you want to be an asshole. You go down to his place of work and you make a fool out of him. You insult him in front of his coworkers and laugh about it. You have everything, a nice home, a good job, great kids, and a wife. He has nothing, but you feel that you have to push him down even further. It was a rotten thing to do, and right now I am ashamed to be your wife." I didn't move. She was right. "We have an agreement, and I am willing to abide by it, but if you embarrass me one more time like that, I will walk out that door and take the kids with me." I did not reply. "Do you understand?" "Yes." "Good. I am going to take a shower. Call Domino's and get a pizza. The kids are at your parents' house for the night." As I waited for the pizza, I realized one important thing. I was an asshole. Courtney was back to normal the next day. My stupidity was never mentioned again. I never went back to the Firestone store. I started concentrating on work and the children. For the next few years, everything went along smoothly. It was as if those few weeks had been erased from our collective minds. I did not check up on her in any fashion. It wasn't that I didn't care, but more that I didn't want to know. Gilbert Enterprises rewarded my efforts with pay raises and promotions. I was now also in charge of the EDP department. My knowledge in that area was weak, but I knew how to effectively use my people, and it paid off. Our friends and relatives were never aware of the passing problem, and we successfully presented ourselves as a loving, happy family. As far as I know, the kids never had a clue. Amazingly, I was not bitter. I actually enjoyed my relationship and companionship with Courtney. Occasionally, I would think about her and Mitch, but it quickly passed. I had convinced myself that I was not the cuckold and that Mitch was. I took his woman and used her. It was a bit delusional, but it was something that I could live with. Bobby finished high school and immediately joined the Air Force. Danny had a nice scholarship to Penn State, and we had enough in savings to cover all her other expenses. The day after Danny left, Courtney and I sat down. "You knew that this day was coming." "Yes. Mitch will be happy that it is all finally over." "John, I haven't seen or talked to Mitch in over 6 years. I have no idea where he even is." That was good news, but I tried not to let it show. Of course, I knew why she had not seen Mitch, but there is no way that I would let her know. I really did not want to see her go. Even with the infidelity, I still loved her. I wanted to let her know, but my stupid pride was holding me back. She started talking again before I could say anything. "John, as I remember, you said that we would stay together as long as the children were still at home. Is that correct?" "Yes. I'm pregnant." 2 stupid people. Things were not going as I had anticipated. I got up and went outside. The fresh air helped to calm me down. I was sitting on the porch glider, staring at nothing in particular. Courtney came out and sat beside me. She placed her hand on mine, but did not say anything. Both of us had tears in our eyes. I knew now that she really wanted to stay together. It was a desperate move on her part, and I am sure that she had spent a lot of time setting it up. "You know that I had a vasectomy 6 years ago?" "Yes. It was a mean, nasty thing to do. I also think that you regretted doing it." Why? Because it effectively ended our marriage. I didn't want it to end. I didn't either. But I don't understand why you would think that getting pregnant would make a difference. The result of your disclosing that would produce the opposite result than what you wanted. I had no choice. If you had given me a clue or some type of hope, I might have done things differently. I didn't want to lose you. Okay, I'll bite. Who is the father? Courtney reached into her apron pocket and removed an envelope. This cost me over $8,000. I have no idea who the father is, but you and I are going to raise this child as our own. They are your terms, and I am going to hold you to them. The top of the form inside read, Lehigh Burke's Fertility Clinic.